Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating report on how everyday people act as the ultimate defense along India's western coast. When we think of national security, we usually picture these massive naval ships, right? Or high-tech military radars scanning the horizon. But India's western coastline is incredibly vast and historically pretty porous, which makes it uniquely vulnerable to international smuggling rings and unauthorized entries. So, along the sprawling, unpredictable coasts of Maharashtra and Goa, the reality on the water is vastly different from what you might expect. It actually relies on a human shield. Here's a quick look at our agenda for this explainer. We're going to cover the philosophy of community policing, compare Maharashtra's industrial scale with Goa's tourist focus, examine the environmental and systemic threats they face, and finish up with future actions. All right, diving right into Section 1, the philosophy, and viewing the community as custodians. Okay, let's dive into this concept of community-oriented policing. To really understand this, we have to look back at the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks, widely known as 26/11. That tragic event exposed some critical vulnerabilities in relying solely on traditional military and police might to secure literally thousands of kilometers of open shoreline. The source material defines this new approach not just as a standard policy, but as an intangible contract between the police and the community. It's a total philosophical shift where the public and police actively collaborate. Instead of a top-down mandate, it assumes a positive, proactive relationship. On a daily basis, this means grassroots problem solving. It's pooling local resources, think fishing boats, local radios, neighborhood networks, to creatively detect and solve crimes long before they ever reach the mainland. So, as this quote brilliantly highlights, today, coastal communities are increasingly being seen as custodians of maritime security. Local fishers are no longer just bystanders casting nets, they are literally the essential eyes and ears of national security. And if you think about it, well, it makes perfect sense. Who knows the waters better than the people who have lived and worked on them for generations? These fishers possess this deep, multi-generational knowledge. They know the subtle shifts in the tides, the hidden coves where a boat could anchor unseen, and they can instantly recognize when a vessel or a crew simply doesn't belong in their local waters. Moving right along to Section 2, Maharashtra's scale and securing a massive coastline. So, the state of Maharashtra is dealing with a staggering 720-kilometer coastline. Securing that much open water is a monumental logistical challenge. To handle it, they utilize a multi-tiered approach anchored by 19 dedicated coastal police stations. Now, you might be thinking, 19 stations doesn't sound like a lot for 720 kilometers, which is exactly why these act as highly strategic nodal points in critical areas like Mumbai, Raigad, and Ratnagiri. They're equipped with quick reaction teams. These are highly trained tactical units ready to deploy at a moment's notice, and fast interception boats. Through seamless logistical coordination with the Indian Navy and Coast Guard, these stations manage to bring average response times down to just 15 minutes in high-priority zones. Achieving a 15-minute response time out on the open ocean where weather and waves are constant, unpredictable variables, that is an incredibly impressive feat. But the real power of this system, the true backbone, comes from the people, specifically the Sagar Rakshak Dal. Formed back in 2005, this is a vigilant force of over 7,000 local fishers spread out across 263 coastal villages. These folks act as the literal front line of the law. They use their own communication networks, like the VHF radios right on their boats, to instantly relay suspicious activities to the police. And they're trained to look for very specific signs of smuggling: vessels sitting unusually low in the water, boats operating without lights at night, or crews transferring cargo offshore. I mean, imagine a local fisher spotting an unmarked speedboat just loitering near a rocky inlet. A quick radio call from that fisher can trigger a rapid interception by those quick reaction teams, leading to a successful rescue or seizure. In the last 5 years alone, this grassroots network has assisted in over 500 search and rescue operations. Now, obviously, you can't just ask citizens to patrol without heavily backing them up, right? So to support these members, the state aggressively pushes awareness programs. They conduct about 120 awareness sessions annually, educating locals on reporting mechanisms, fishing regulations, and emergency procedures. Since 2020, they've actually trained over 25,000 residents and distributed more than 15,000 emergency contact kits. These kits are great. They include essential items like waterproof communication devices, flares, and direct hotlines to the coastal police. They even run a biannual coastal security drill called Sagar Kavach, and this is intense. During these massive exercises, security agencies simulate a real mock infiltration. They have personnel play the role of hostile forces trying to sneak onto the coast, rigorously testing both the vigilance of the local fishers and the readiness of the police to intercept them. And it's not all just walkie-talkies and visual spotting. This immense human effort is backed by some serious cutting-edge technology. Under the Coastal Surveillance Network Phase 2, Maharashtra has deployed over 1,000 transponders on fishing vessels across the Konkan coast. These devices constantly broadcast a boat's identity and location. But what makes the system truly formidable is how they handle the data. Authorities are using advanced data analytics and pattern recognition artificial intelligence to process all of this information. Basically, the AI takes the thousands of automated pings from radar sensors and cross-references them with the on-the-ground reports coming from the local fishers. By analyzing this tech-human synergy, the system successfully identified 35 distinct smuggling hotspots that frankly might have otherwise gone completely unnoticed. Let's pivot now to Section 3, Goa's tourist focus and their specialized approach. So Goa's coastline is much smaller. It's only about 160 kilometers, but it faces completely unique challenges driven by its booming tourism industry. We're talking millions of transient visitors, creating a literal needle-in-a-haystack problem for security forces. While Maharashtra is out hunting smugglers across vast open waters using massive local forces, Goa's 4 coastal stations and programs like Coastal Watch are laser-focused on balancing border security with incredibly heavy tourist traffic. They have to constantly monitor water sports, prevent accidents, and manage massive beach crowds. And here is the crucial takeaway. Managing all of these local tourist issues heavily drains resources and manpower away from actual border patrol, which fundamentally alters the security landscape there. To handle this highly unique, fast-paced environment, Goa deployed 150 dedicated tourist police officers across 25 key hotspots. We're talking incredibly famous, crowded beaches like Kalangut, Baga, and Kolva. This specialized force is impressively efficient. As you can see, they resolve 85% of reported cases within just 48 hours. And they aren't just dealing with lost passports or petty theft either. They are constantly on the lookout for severe cross-border drug operations that often hide in plain sight right amidst the party scene. They basically act as local guides, rule enforcers, and first responders all rolled into one. And they've successfully reduced crimes against tourists by a solid 30% between 2021 and 2024. But tourism today is heavily digital, right? In a tourist economy, physical security is intrinsically linked to digital security. Because tourism relies so heavily on technology for things like bookings, digital payments, and navigation, Goa has pushed massive cybercrime awareness campaigns. They've reached over 100,000 individuals to combat phishing and online fraud, targeting both tourists and local businesses. They conduct over 75 annual sessions just for hotel owners, basically turning them into a secondary network of informants. Additionally, through community policing forums, hoteliers and traditional fishers collaborate directly with the police. As an example, these forums work together to spot and remove illegal fishing nets across 15 kilometers of coast, and their joint intelligence gathering achieved a 20% reduction in drug-related incidents. They even managed to secure a 50 crore rupee tourism safety fund to ensure these vital programs keep running. Which brings us to Section 4, Environmental Threats and the Vulnerability of the Coast. Here's where things get really tough. This entire security system relies heavily on traditional fishing communities, like the Rampankars in Goa. But climate change poses a literal existential threat to this whole model. According to a study by the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, a staggering 20% of Maharashtra's coastline is eroding at an alarming rate. And the human cost here is immense. When severe erosion destroys the land, it displaces these traditional fishing villages. Families are forced to move inland, losing access to their boats and their generational income. And think about it. When a local fisher is totally preoccupied with immediate survival, economic ruin, and finding a new home, their ability and willingness to act as an unpaid security informant just drops to zero. A displaced fisherman simply can no longer be a coastal protector. Meanwhile, over in Goa, the Coastal Zone Management Authority indicates that many beaches face severe land loss by 2050. This creates a deadly, vicious cycle of climate change and unregulated tourism. Massive coastal development for tourists accelerates erosion, which in turn degrades the environment and destroys local livelihoods. This loss of income breeds real desperation within local communities. And as desperation grows, illegal activities like poaching and unregulated sand mining actually increase just to make ends meet. It's a tragic paradox. The very communities desperately needed to monitor the coast for national security are either pushed out or pushed into illicit activities by the changing geography and economy. It's one thing when the mighty ocean and a changing climate threaten our human shield. But that leads us to a deeply uncomfortable question we have to ask. what happens when the policing models break down from the inside? Because even with the best intentions and the most cutting-edge technology, these vital systems face immense internal bureaucratic roadblocks. Let's unpack that in Section 5, Systemic Challenges, the Ground Realities. Look at this table. It really lays out the hurdles brilliantly. On the ground, achieving perfect security faces three massive challenges. First up, resource constraints. In Maharashtra, despite having highly trained quick reaction teams, the actual interception boats often go completely unmaintained due to delayed funding. Over in Goa, the Coastal Watch program is severely underfunded, leading to painfully slow modernization. Then, we have massive language barriers. When a police officer from a major inland city gets deployed to the coast, they often struggle to understand the hyper-local Marathi or Konkani dialects spoken by the fishermen. Crucial intelligence is frequently lost simply because the officer and the informant can't clearly communicate with each other. Finally, there's a sheer lack of awareness. Older fishers in Maharashtra often just don't know how to use the high-tech reporting apps, while in Goa, the rapid, explosive growth of tourism means locals simply prioritize their daily economic survival over attending voluntary security meetings. Okay, let's wrap up with Section 6, Future Actions and Securing the Future. So how do we actually fix this? Overcoming these deep vulnerabilities requires a forward-looking, sustainable strategy. The report lays out three distinct steps. Step 1 is capacity building. This means training police officers to actually speak the local dialects, utilizing multilingual staff, and expanding the National Cadet Corps, a youth wing of the armed forces in coastal districts to build a younger generation of vigilant citizens. Step 2 is technology utilization, developing highly intuitive, user-friendly reporting apps that older generations can easily navigate and ensuring continuous government funding so coastal radar networks don't just fall into disrepair. And Step 3, which is huge, is true community empowerment, integrating locals into sustainable projects like mangrove restoration. Mangroves are incredible. They naturally protect the coast from storm surges, they act as massive nurseries to restore local fish populations, and that in turn restores economic stability. When a community is economically stable, they suddenly have the bandwidth to help police their waters again. The detailed, in-depth insights in this report show us that coastal security isn't just about massive Navy ships and high-tech radar towers. It's intricately, deeply tied to the people who call the coast their home. The ultimate human shield is only ever as strong as the socioeconomic foundation it stands on. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought to end this explainer. Can we truly secure our national borders if we don't first secure the health and livelihoods of the local citizens protecting them? Food for thought. Thanks for joining me on this explainer today, and keep questioning the world around you.